Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
And essentially we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. By Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan. Acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians, a Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology, look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Well, hello and welcome to our viewers of Access to Democracy. My name is Bill Raker and I'm guest host for this particular episode of the program. We're excited to welcome as a guest to the program today Rick King, who is Executive Vice President of Operations at Thomson Reuters here in Eagan. And Rick, welcome, glad to have you. We were talking earlier, this could be your 26th, 27th, 28th appearance as a guest on the program over the years.
I think so, Bill. It's been a lot, and we'll have to check with Alan for the official record.
Oh, sounds good. Well, congratulations to being a repeat host. We know, Rick, you are very educated and experienced in a lot of areas and could talk about a lot of different topics. But today I want to focus on your role as chair of the Metropolitan Airports Commission, or MAC for short, which oversees the operations at MSP, Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. You know, to begin, let's talk about the commission. What's the structure of the commission? How is it chartered? And what's the mission of that particular body?
The Metropolitan Airports Commission was created by the legislature in 1943. It has a structure that it's called a public corporation. So it has its own bylaws and so forth, and it's semi-independent. It falls within all the state guidelines and so forth, and it's enabled by that legislation. Has 15 commissioners that make up the board. The governor names all but two. The commissioners that the governor names are most of the people. 8 of them have districts around the metropolitan area. They are essentially the equivalent of 2 Met Council districts. So that's kind of gives you the size. So they're spread around the metro area. There's also the chair position named, and that's sort of an at-large. There's 4 out-state commissioners. Usually they're representing areas like Rochester, St. Cloud, and Duluth, and outstate Minnesota, where we have those other 3 with fairly large commercial airports. And then there's 1 each named by the mayor of Minneapolis and the mayor of St. Paul, adding up to 15. Staggered terms, which is different than the Met Council. Mm-hmm. So every year, 2 or 3 go off and could be reappointed or could have some new faces in there, but you never have a total turnover like you do with the Met Council.
So there is some continuity from year to year.
Yes.
You were serving on the MAC before you ascended to the chair position, is that right?
True. I had 2 terms, so that's 8 years. I didn't mention that each term is 4 years. And the governor asked in July if I would chair. So now I'm in my 9th year. This is the part of the first year of being the chair. So there's a lot more involved being the chair than there is, being a a commissioner, but it's a, it's a very enjoyable thing to do, very challenging also.
Well, thank you for serving in that public capacity. I really appreciate the leadership that you bring to that position, and I know that there's a lot to oversee in the operations of MSP. Can you give us some idea about the scope or the size of the operations of our airport?
Sure. We're the 17th largest airport in the U.S. We do about 38 million passengers a year, so that's a major airport. We obviously have a carrier, Delta, that's the mainstay there. Approximately 67 or 68% of the flying out of there, but we're also represented by every single American-based airline has some flights in and out of our airport. So we've got some diversity. We've got everything from the legacy carriers, which are so-called United, Delta, American. Then you've got Southwest, who's sort of graduating from being a low-cost carrier to being more of the mainline. You've got the hometown one in Sun Country, which does a great job here. And then you have a bunch of what's called ultra low-cost or low-cost carriers that, in essence, when you blend them all together, you're providing great service for business people and for people who travel on leisure activities.
Quite an operation. I was doing a little research earlier, and I found a statistic that said year-to-date through the end of November that there were over 370,000 operations at the airport. Now, would that be the number of landings and takeoffs?
Yes, exactly. Operations are both landings and takeoffs. So what we've seen interestingly over the years, which people may identify with, planes have gotten bigger, planes have gotten fuller. You have less operations than you did 10, 15 years ago, but you have more passengers than you did 10 or 15 years ago. And that's, in the airline's words, that's upgauging. That means you fly less 50-seat prop planes or regional jets, you fly more 90-person jets, or up to the 180-person jet, or the wide bodies or the two-aisle aircrafts that fly 200-300 people. So upgauging means that we've got larger aircraft. We also have a newer fleet mix than we had ever before, and the importance of that is that new engine technology, new winglet technology, those little things at the end help the airplanes climb, be more fuel efficient, and also they're quieter.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about noise pollution a little later in the program. Can you give us an idea of the number of employees that support the operations there at the airport? Because I think that's a great contribution to the community to have the airport as an employer.
Yes, and the employees fall into two different buckets. So the Metropolitan Airports Commission has a staff of about 600 people. That they do the snow plowing, they do the administration, they do all the contracting. But there's 20,000 additional employees that are represented in the airlines, the food service, the news shops, all of the commerce that goes around it, running the parking garage, all of those kinds of things. So it's a huge employer in the big, and that's an economic engine that gets talked about quite a bit. In addition to that, we're in the middle of a $1.6 billion construction, renovation. We call it the operational improvement work, because it goes anywhere from the outside roadways to the addition of things like the hotel, the new parking garage that will be open in the spring, and some of the new restaurants and the retail shops that are open inside the terminal. Also, all those things where the construction wells are, we're making it wider, new signage, all those things. Construction jobs.
Well, I can certainly relate to that. I've been traveling in and out of the airport for some 40 years, and there's always been some kind of construction project going on during that period of time. So it's amazing, the transformation and the transition into the major operation that it is today.
And that brings up, sorry to interrupt, but one of the complexities in having a facility like we have, which has been around for a while, is you have to modernize it while you're still running the airport. When Denver built their new airport, they could build that airport all by themselves without any operations running out of it and still run out of Stapleton and then just do the transition. But when we do something that's new, we have to take into consideration the flying public, the contractors, how everybody gets through, does their work, but still can get to their destinations.
And there is some inconveniences associated with that at some times. And you've brought up the topic that I want to go into at this point, which is what's the main topics on the agenda that the commission is dealing with right now?
Well, the board is responsible to oversee the fiduciary aspects of it. So between hiring and managing the executive director or CEO, you have the fiduciary role. Now, we do more than that, but those are the statutory common things that the boards would be responsible for. We have one committee that focuses on all the planning, development, and environmental activities. So that group of commissioners will listen to more in-depth stories about things that we're planning to build, things that we need to build, long-term plans for not only MSP, but the 6 reliever airports that we also run. So that's part of the remit as well. They also deal with environmental aspects. So that goes from, as we talked before, you've got noise, you've got solar projects. We've got the largest solar installation in the state above the parking deck. So you've got things like that we think about sustainability. The other group focuses on its operations, finance, and administration. So they'll look at the operational things. How is TSA doing? How is customs doing? All the financial reporting, and then HR related matters and so forth. So the 2 committees do that. They do their in-depth work, and then they report back to the board as a whole, who makes the final decision. The airport board is like a city council. But the airport doesn't really have any residents. But you have a police department, you have a fire department, you have people that have heart attacks or people that have accidents in your road, you have people that park in the wrong place, they get their car towed, all of those things. Plus you have the business people who make a living on it, starting with the people that run the airlines there, but also people that do parking, do restaurants, sell newspapers, sell water, whatever it is. People are making their living off of that. And between the people making their living and the funds from the FAA for airline improvement programs, the airport is then funded. That's how you raise money.
Sure.
So, and the MAC Commission in statute has the ability to tax, which the Met Council does, and you see that in your county taxes. But our board has not done that and doesn't want to do that. It's user-based in terms of the people that are flying have taxes on their tickets, and the people that are making money off of it from providing services to the flying public are paying the share.
So the user is paying.
That's right.
The user fees.
That's right.
You know, the people rushing through the airport to catch their flight or driving by the airport every day never have a chance to think about all of these things that the airport has to deal with and that the commission has to deal with. So it's great that we're learning so much from you about how this whole thing comes about.
One more point on that, which I thought was the most, it's kind of eye-opening when you think about it. Think about you're on this airport commission, so it's going to be all day planes and thinking about that stuff. It's really, there's a lot of things going on that you deal with that have nothing to do with planes. When you think about all the options for people who have to get there early for security, to go through that. You think about all the great workers we have there that participate in unions and how you work with the unions to make sure people are getting the best deals that they can get, and they're paid properly with good benefits so they can show up healthy, not give colds to people because they don't have a right sick time. All of those things don't seem to have a lot to do with airplanes.
Well, thank you for connecting the dots on that one. It's amazing the impact that it has on our communities. If you could identify one big thing that's the biggest challenge that the Commission is dealing with right now, what would that be?
Well, there's, anytime you pick a challenge, you're sort
You
of
have to be careful,
putting the
right?
other ones away. But, I think when you deal with trying to balance the idea that you are supposed to, by statute, advocate for air service for the state of Minnesota. That's one of the things you're told to do. The other thing that you're told to do is advocate for the flying public. And the other thing you're supposed to do is advocate for the public in general relative to that. And the confluence of those together is a challenge, because you could say, I want more airplanes to fly. Well, more airplanes are going to fly over more people's houses, and those people are part of your remit to advocate for. How do you make that right balance? So it is balances like that, particularly around noise, that is sometimes the most difficult thing, because what the legislature told you to do, which is the right thing to do, needs to be put in some balance. So, how do you get to that? And it's got to be through a really open, transparent, public process. But when you finish that, everybody's going to be a little bit unhappy, for sure, and everybody's going to be maybe a little bit happy, for sure. No one goes away fully happy, and hopefully no one goes away fully mad.
Well, you're doing a great job of dealing with those issues and finding the balance that you can make work, even though it doesn't necessarily satisfy the wishes and the needs of all of the constituents in this complex mix that we have here.
It is challenging. I think my first objective in all of that, I want to get to a good answer, but if it was an easy answer, it'd already be done.
Sure.
So it's hard. And what I want to make sure is everybody feels like they've been able to state their opinion, their feeling, their concerns, and that then we deliberate around all of that data and all of that information and try to make the best possible and hopefully optimal decision.
One of the organizations, one of the bodies that helps bring these issues forward and helps identify ways to bring and maintain balance is something called the Noise Oversight Committee, the NOC. Mm-hmm. Can you describe for us what the NOC is and the role that it plays for, I guess, in support of the Metropolitan Airports Commission?
Sure. The NOC is a fantastic organization, and it's made up of communities that are on the perimeter of the airport, and then there's some at-large members that come from different communities and kind of rotate through. But it also has members like the airlines on it, mm-hmm. and it has community people on it, and then it has staff that work with those folks to kind of get at the issues they have. And part of the staff there, the FAA, sits through a lot of those as well. So when you look at that group can go way deep on issues that are around the community and try to come up with the best possible compromise. There's been elected officials on that, but more often than not, you see people that are in the community and connected to the community organizations that they might represent to try to get to the right point. When NOC was created, there wasn't anything like NOC in any other airport across the country. And this was a way to deal with the very sensitive issue of noise that obviously concerns people, and try to work on ways to mitigate it, still have the airport do what the airport has to do, because that's part of statute, but also try to minimize the impact on residents. And NOC has been able to come forward with some great recommendations that have really helped. When they give us recommendations, what we do is we look at those, we approve those as the airport owner, and we forward those on to the FAA and ask the FAA to look at things in a view toward, we know you're after, you know you want safety, and we know you need efficiency in the way you approach things, but maybe if we make a few tweaks, the community will have some relief in some areas, and that's what we want, is those ways that we can tweak the flight routes or things that the FAA can do and still feel like it's safe. No compromise there. We all want that to be number one, but maybe we take a little of the impact away.
Well, let's pursue that just a little bit further. We talked earlier about the involvement of communities and the impact that the operations of the airport has on communities. And Egan seems to be right in the center of the vector of takeoffs and landings, and has experienced a tremendous increase in the noise level over the last several years for a variety of reasons. And so the Airport Relations Commission of Egan and the Egan City Council brought forward the issues and some recommendations that were heard by the Noise Oversight Committee, and the recommendations were passed on to through the MAC. Hopefully we can get some resolution, but there was an article that appeared in a local newspaper after the presentation at the last NOC meeting, and there was a reference in the article about how complex and slow this issue is to see any changes towards mitigating or shifting the noise patterns. And I think you answered that question without me even asking it by explaining how that process works. But the article went on to have a reference in there about the MAC doesn't want or has a policy of not moving noise or redirecting the noise pollution from the airport from one community to another. Is that really the case?
Well, I don't think we have, Bill, I don't think we really have a policy about that. But if you look at all the neighborhoods around, the ones where the runway is pointing and the planes are going to fly over in departure or even in arrival are going to get more of the noise than the communities that aren't in those locations. And Egan is right south of runway 17, which is used quite a bit for departures. So, what our goal would be is try to distribute the arrivals and departures such that they are as equal as they can be. And we take advantage of the natural geography that might present itself. For example, if you depart heading to the northwest, which would be runway 30 left or right, what we do is we have routes that turn people so they're flying over 62. So hopefully the biggest noise impact once they turn left on that would be, for the 30 left, would be the noises over the highway, which is ideal. On the south departure on 17, people are hopefully turning more along the Minnesota River.
Right.
I think one of the recommendations is to enhance that some more, make sure more people, more of the airplanes are flying over there. Now, when they depart, they're under the control of the FAA. So that's why the FAA is involved in this, why that recommendation from the NOC comes to the MAC. The MAC, as in airport parlance, is the airport sponsor, the owner. So we would forward that to the FAA. The FAA would then do some traffic studies for safety and so forth. And as we do this particular show today, Monday, today's Friday, is actually the day where we'll approve and send that off to the FAA. So we hope that's a pretty fast process, but we want them to take a good look at it. What we can best hope off of a runway like 17 is once you get up into the air, that they're going to turn some to the right, maybe some by 20 degrees, some by 15, some by 10, some by 5, and turn some to the left.
Right. Yeah.
And that'll fan them out a little bit more. And by that method, everybody doesn't, one set of slice of folks or two slices of folks don't get all of the planes. But those planes that are flying off of 17 are going to go somewhere to the south. So it's not like we're saying you can't spread them out. It's just we can't say, we would prefer to have them show up in different places, but not just move it, say, from going over Egan to going over Burnsville or going over Apple Valley. That doesn't solve the problem.
It's not that simple.
Spreading them out and saying, okay, you're all south, you're going to get some of this traffic. That's sort of the way it usually goes.
Well, on behalf of the Airport Relations Commission in Egan and the citizens of Egan, thanks to you and the Commission for accepting our recommendations and forwarding them on to FAA. We appreciate that and look forward to what that outcome might be. I think FAA has agreed that they will hold some hearings for the communities to have another opportunity to have some dialogue with FAA on these particular issues.
And to that point, years ago, they didn't do things like that. I think we've worked with them, various communities have worked with them where they've really gotten to a much more participatory process, and their involvement in the NOC has certainly helped that. And I also want to compliment the Egan, the city council, the mayor who spoke for us the other day, and the Airport Relations Committee, because they really followed the best guidelines to get some action taken. They did it swiftly. They got all the support they needed, and the MAC will support that going forward. And we'll hopefully be talking about some distribution of those flights in a different way that gives some relief.
We look forward to how that's going to come out for us. As we run down to the end very quickly, what's the long-term vision for the Metropolitan Airports Commission, like the next 10 or 15 years? From a strategic standpoint, what do you envision? What do you see happening or hope that happens?
Well, you're going to see cleanup of the roadways coming in. You're going to see a bigger, brighter, wider terminal, new signage. We've got that hotel. You'll have a new parking garage open. We'll see another, probably in 20 years, we'll see some new facilities, restaurants coming in there and like that. If I will really look out there, I'll leave you with one to kind of think about. I think that we could very well see a way that we have electric helicopter commuting from the Twin Cities out to St. Cloud or Duluth and Rochester as a way of the future. Electric helicopter.
That sounds exciting, very exciting. Rick, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate the insight and information that you shared with us. Hopefully our communities, our viewers have a better understanding of the Metropolitan Airport Commission and the role that it plays in the operations of our international airport.
Thank you, Bill.
Rick.
Appreciate it.